Hey guys! So with holiday makeup season in full swing, I figured it was time for another video talking you out of buying new makeup. This is basically... Hi Tala. This is basically a series where I play devil's advocate for you. So if you are on a no-buy or a low-buy, or you're just trying to avoid making impulsive purchases, I am here to give you some reasons why maybe you should skip these products. But of course, if you were already planning on buying any of these products or you already have bought them and you don't want to be talked out of them, then please disregard what I'm saying. But this video is really specifically for those people that want to be talked out of buying things. So let's go ahead and get into it. I wanted to start with one that definitely caught my eye at first, having been someone who was a huge fan of these palettes back in their heyday. I think that's the first time I've ever used the word heyday in my entire life. Anastasia Beverly Hills has launched mini versions of the Modern Renaissance and Sultry palettes. I was kind of surprised to see this, but at the same time, this is definitely a smart business decision for ABH because so many people who wear makeup, whether they are really active in the online beauty community or they have never even seen a beauty YouTube video, have probably owned one of these two palettes in the past 5-6 years, however long it's been since these came out initially. I especially want to focus on the mini Sultry palette because I do think of the two, this one is a little bit more tempting simply because you can't get the original Sultry palette anymore unless you wanted to go on Poshmark or eBay or something. But with Modern Renaissance, the original Modern Renaissance palette is also still out. Take a look at the original Sultry palette first, and I would say pick out your top 5 shades from that palette that you think you would use all the time. And then compare it to the new version. Does the new version have all of those shades? Because honestly, to me, like, the fact that this palette is missing that bright coral shade makes sense because I do think they were probably going for something that is more quote-unquote wearable. With neutral colors that the majority of people are going to want to wear, they went with the safer route by not including that coral shade. If you showed me a picture of this mini Sultry palette without telling me what it is, I would never think that it was inspired by the original Sultry palette, which is funny because all the shades in it do look pretty much identical to their counterpart in the original palette. But without that shade, and honestly without the rose gold shimmer as well, it just seems like something's missing from this, because what I always loved about the original Sultry was the fact that it had all of the neutral shades that I like to have in one place. Like, it has rosy shades, it has silvery gray shades, it has taupes and browns and golds. It touches on all of those categories of neutrals, or what we call neutrals. The mini version, I see brown, gold, taupe, and gray, but I don't see any rosy shades. And if you're someone that loves rosy shadows, I feel like you're kind of missing that part of this palette. Like I said, I can see why they left out, especially the coral shade, but I would even be happy if they would have just put the shade Rose Quartz in here too. But if your 5 favorite shades from the original Sultry palette, or the 5 shades that when you look at it you think that looks like it's going to be one of my most used shades in the palette, if the new mini Sultry palette doesn't have those 5 shades in it, then that means that more than half of the mini palette are shades that you aren't as excited about from the original Sultry palette. So to me, that makes it not worth it. And then as far as Modern Renaissance goes, I was also disappointed to see they didn't include both of those light shimmers in here, because one of my favorite things about Modern Renaissance was the fact that it had a light pink shimmer and a light champagne shimmer, and I felt like having both of those options for a light shimmer shade made sense because the palette does have a mix of berries and pinks and browns and warm tones. And there were only 3 shimmers in the original Modern Renaissance palette, one of the 3 being more of almost a satin shade. That was the shade Antique Bronze, that dark brown satin shade. And then the only other 2 shimmers in here were Primavera and Vermeer. I mean, on the other hand, because the original Modern Renaissance also was a mostly matte palette, it makes sense that they kept mostly mattes in the mini version. But I just feel like it's kind of odd to have a 9-pan square palette like this, all matte except for one lone shimmer. Like, it just seems odd to me. Like, either make it all matte or give us a couple shimmer options. I'll be really curious to hear reviews on how these compare to the old versions. I'm assuming they're using the same formula, but maybe not, I don't know. Definitely a smart business idea because I think a lot of people will be really excited about this, but I don't know. I think they're pretty skippable. Speaking of new launches that I was kind of surprised to see, but also somewhat pleasantly surprised to see because it's something a little bit different from Urban Decay. So Urban Decay is launching 2 limited edition Moondust eyeshadow quads. So these quads each have 4 of the signature Moondust shadow formula. So it's basically a palette of 4 sparkly toppers, which is a cool idea. I'm happy to see this because I know people have been asking for a while for Urban Decay to start incorporating their Moondust formula into naked palettes. I feel like, you know, everyone loves the Moondust formula. In general, people aren't that wowed by the naked formula, so it would make sense for them to start maybe sprinkling some more Moondust shades into their palettes. I wasn't necessarily expecting them to come out with a palette of just Moondust shades, but I do think, again, I think it's a smart idea for them. Like, I think this will sell. There are 2 palettes. One is Space Cowboy, which does have that OG shade Space Cowboy and 3 other shades. And then the second palette is called Galactic Cowgirl. It looks to me, correct me if I'm wrong, I checked all the currently available Moondust single shadow shades, and it looks like the only 2 shades from either of these palettes that are also available as singles are Space Cowboy and Wild Dipper. But the 4 shades in the Galactic Cowgirl quad, they look like 4 new shades that haven't been made as singles before. And each of these palettes retail for $39, which sounds like a lot for 4 shadows, because it's like $10 per shade almost. But if you break down the cost, the Urban Decay Moondust shadows individually are $24 a piece, which is also a lot for a single shadow. For me personally, I haven't even tried Urban Decay's Moondust shadow formula before. Based on the reviews I've heard, I think I would like it, but at the same time, it feels like a big risk to spend $40 on a formula that I'm not even sure I like when I have eyeshadow toppers that I already love in my collection, but I have those formulas that I already know I like, so I don't really want to take the risk and spend $40 when I'm not sure I would even like those 4 shades. But also, even if you are a huge fan of the Moondust shadows to begin with, keep in mind these palettes are limited edition, and so I feel like Urban Decay products go on sale for half off all the time, so more than likely you'll be able to eventually get these for more around $20. That would bring the cost per shade down to just under $5, which to me, like, that would be a good deal. But I would say if you're feeling really tempted by these, at the very least, wait until it goes on sale and the hype has died down to see if you still want it at that point. But also, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I kind of wish the shades in here were like a little bit more exciting, especially with all of the already amazing drugstore and indie brand sparkly topper options that we have. For $39, I need a little bit more, you know? I definitely like the Space Cowboy quad better than the Galactic Cowgirl quad. Just the shades themselves to me look a bit more sparkly and like things I would use more often. But yeah, I don't know, I'm not loving like the super yellow gold in there in the Galactic Cowgirl one. I don't know, I'm just not really feeling those shades. Just like every other brand on the market, e.l.f. has finally hopped on the lip oil train. Looks like there are 7 shades in the line. The first 3 look pretty much clear. Crystal Clear, I think, is actually clear, but then Pink Quartz and Coral Fixation look like they turn essentially clear on the lips. And then the last 4 shades look like they do have a good bit of pigment. There's a pink one, a red one, a more brown one, and a berry shade. And I have to say, these look really pretty. I'm not sure how sheer these e.l.f. lip oils are. Some of the shades do look like they have a little bit more pigment to them, but at the end of the day, most sheer tinted lip oils are going to look really similar on the lips. So if you already have a few lip oils that you like or lip glosses that you like, because let's be real, they kind of all do have the same end result, it's just they might have a different texture, but you're not necessarily going to get a brand new look from this particular lip oil. It doesn't look that different to me from all the other lip oils out there. It says an ultra glossy tinted lip oil that nourishes, hydrates, and enhances your lips' natural color. Non-sticky, plush, oversized cushion applicator hugs lips. Fresh minty scent. $8. You had me up until fresh minty scent because I try to avoid minty lip products, especially when it's something like a lip oil, which to me is also kind of a lip treatment as well. Like I expect it to give my lips some good moisture. Minty lip products tend to dry my lips out. I remember I used to have the EOS mint lip balm, and At first I thought I really liked it and I would just be applying it constantly. I think I even almost used up the whole thing before I realized that it was making my lips more dry in the long run. It felt nice to apply, like it felt like it was giving my lips some moisture, but in the long run, the mint was actually drying my lips out because mint can be really irritating. In my opinion, they shouldn't put mint in lip treatments. I think, you know, it's fine, I guess, if it's like a lip plumper and that's the point because it's supposed to plump up your lips. I don't necessarily expect lipsticks and even lip plumpers to necessarily be like a lip treatment, but when it comes to a lip oil, I don't want any mint in there. Like, that's just the worst thing you could put in there. So who knows, maybe this particular mint flavoring is special in some way and it wouldn't dry out my lips. I don't know, but that's why I personally am gonna skip this, and I think it's a good reason to skip it too, if especially as we're getting into winter. Yeah, I would stay away from any kind of minty lip products because it might be drying out your lips without you even noticing. I have to say, I was a lip oil hater for a long time, but I've recently found some lip oils that I actually really love. My favorite one is the Ciate London Bronze Glow Shimmering Lip Oil and the Say Lip Oil. Before I tried these, I didn't quite get the difference between a lip oil and a lip gloss. I didn't really see why we needed a different word for what I thought was pretty much the same thing as a lip gloss, because a lot of the lip oils that are out there pretty much are lip glosses, or they feel a lot like a gloss. They're kind of sticky, they can even be a little bit stringy. But to me, the number one difference is a lip oil should feel more like an oil and not quite as sticky as a lip gloss. I think that's sort of what most people would want out of a lip oil, is maybe you don't want to wear a full-on lip gloss because it might feel a little bit sticky or gloopy or uncomfortable, whereas a lip oil is a little bit thinner. It still gives your lips some shine, but it's not like sticky or thick by any means. That's kind of what a lip oil is for, and that's what I like about both of these, that I feel like actually makes them different from most lip glosses that I've tried. Anyway, long tangent aside, I kind of get the lip oil hype now, even though I do feel like it's hard to find good lip oils. Honestly, I think it would be fun to do like a lip oil showdown where I compare a bunch of different lip oil formulas and let you know which ones actually do have a good lip oil texture. Let me know if you guys would like to see me do like a lip oil roundup similar to my sunscreen roundups. I would probably try like 10. I don't think I would want to try more than 10. I already have a handful, so I would only need to pick up a few more, but let me know if you would like me to do a video like that, because I personally am really into the idea of lip oils right now. This is the time of year where so many brands start putting out these combined face and eye palettes, which I guess I feel like I keep saying in this video, makes sense. It's like a smart move for these brands because that's something that it's a very giftable item. I feel like it's kind of a classic Christmas gift to give someone, is like an all-inclusive palette that has both eyeshadows and face products. But Patrick Ta is releasing the Major Holiday Face Palette for $65. It comes with 4 eyeshadows and 4 blushes, 2 of which are cream and 2 of which are powder. The reason I don't like combined face and eye palettes, I also don't like face palettes, and for sort of the same reasons, but a lot of the time when you have one of these palettes that has multiple different cheek shades, like in this case there's 4 different shades of blush, but the range of depth of these blush shades varies so widely that these 2 shades in the middle look like they would work well for medium to dark skin tones, but then these 2 shades on the far end look like they would work for me. Like, those are really fair shades, and if I were to pick up this palette, I know I wouldn't use those 2 middle shades at all. They look too dark and too bright for me. Like, I know this bubblegum pink blush shade is still really trendy. I mean, it was really trendy last year, but this year being the year of the Barbie movie, I feel like pink blush has just stayed really popular. But I don't think most people need 4 blushes that are just different tones of the same exact type of shade. These are all a cool toned pink color, just different depths of that color. Unless you're going to be using this palette on other people as well and you need to have a few different shade options, I just don't think it makes sense to have 4 blushes that are all basically the same color, just different depths. And then the 4 eyeshadows in here kind of look similar to some of the shades in the Urban Decay Moondust quads, at least the colors, probably not the finish, but they're just 4 very basic looking shimmers. Now, of course, you can use the blushes on the eyes as well, so maybe if you really like to do pink eyeshadow looks, I guess that could make sense. But I would also ask yourself, how often do you use palettes that have both cheek and eye products in one? I feel like whenever I've had a palette like this, I don't end up using all the shades. Usually, like, I do my cheek products before my eyeshadows, so usually by the time I'm pulling out a palette to do my eyeshadow, I've already applied a blush. So I would probably end up never using this palette because I wouldn't think to use it for blush initially, and the shadows themselves don't look exciting enough for me to want to reach for it when I am picking out a palette. So those are some things to think about with this one. I just don't think this palette is going to make sense for the majority of people. I feel like this video is very palette focused, but then again, there are just so many palettes out. There's also so many gift sets out. I didn't even want to venture into those in this video because honestly, I find gift sets really overwhelming, but I've seen both Kelly Gooch and Lauren May Beauty have both done videos covering a lot of the holiday sets and advent calendars. So I would check out their videos if you want to hear the scoop on all the different sets that are out there. But Natasha Denona, she's pumping out the palettes. We have two new mini palettes from Natasha. We have the Triochrome mini and the mini bronze. Also, by the way, I did end up finally purchasing the I Need a Nude palette. I'm really excited. So it hasn't gotten here yet, but I am planning on doing like a 7 looks 1 palette with that when it gets here, so I can give you my full thoughts. This will be my first ever Natasha Denona palette. The only other Natasha Denona product I've tried was a little single from the bronze palette, which actually we'll get to that because, so the mini bronze palette, I actually posted this on my Instagram stories and was like, what is wrong with me? Why do I want this trio? And I'm really glad one of you pointed out to me that the single shadow in the middle is actually the shade Silk, which I used to have a single version of that I got as a point perk from Sephora. And I know some of you have gotten that as a point perk from Sephora as well. I actually did really like that shadow. I even hit pan on it, but I ended up decluttering it earlier this year just because I didn't feel like I needed to keep it in my singles collection. I felt like I had other shades in my collection that were that achieved the same thing, so it didn't make sense for me to keep it as a single. But I'm so glad they pointed that out to me because in the promo photos, I didn't even notice that it was the same shade. To me, it almost looked like a different shade. In some of the pictures, it looked way more taupe. So thank you for pointing that out to me because now I know I can happily skip this one. If you also have that single as well, it doesn't make sense to buy a trio that has that same shade in it again just for those 2 mattes when those 2 mattes look like mattes that you find in every neutral brown palette ever made. Let's be real, all 3 of these shades really aren't that special. Also from Natasha Denona, we have the new mini Triochrome palette. I keep wanting to call it the mini Triochrome palette because I'm getting it mixed up with the new House Labs Triclone concealer, which I also keep wanting to call like I don't know, I keep getting them mixed up, but they're very different products. So this is, according to Natasha Denona's Instagram, sort of intended to be like the additional 4th row of the original Triochrome palette. At first I was really confused because usually Natasha Denona's mini palettes have similar shades to the original larger palette with the same name, but this one looked completely different. I know like the original Triochrome, oh my god, I said it again. The original Triclone, no, what? Like, I know the original Triochrome palette doesn't really have any blues in it, so I was like, how is this supposed to be based off of that? But now I understand. The original Triochrome palette has 1 multichrome per row, and so this palette has just 1 multichrome. I do think it's kind of funny to call a palette a Triochrome palette when it only has 1 Triochrome in it, but I mean, it would be a lot more expensive, I'm sure, if it had all multichromes. This is pretty much a monochrome blue palette, but that multichrome almost has that iridescent peacock feather look to it, that shade. Does look pretty. I don't know. I just think for me personally, and I think for most people, like be honest with yourself, how often do you wear blue eyeshadow? I really like blue eyeshadow, but I only wear it like maybe once a month. And especially blues like this, I know I would just go like months and months without touching this palette. I just think $27 is a little steep for such a small palette. Unless you just wear blues every single day, I just don't think this palette makes sense for most people. I mean, I'm sure there's like the handful of people who are watching this saying like, I wear blue eyeshadow every single day. And if that's you, then, you know, I would say go for it, maybe wait for it to go on sale, but for the 97% of other people that I know are watching this, I think you can skip this one. But let me know if you guys enjoy videos like this. I can definitely do more of these, especially with all of the holiday products coming out. But thank you guys so much for hanging out today. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to subscribe and like the video. And I also have a Patreon and a channel membership if you're interested in supporting my channel further. So I'd love to see you there. Otherwise, I hope you have an amazing rest of your day, and I will talk to you very soon in my next video. Bye!